Hello, we're back.
Hi.
Character Day.
You're not back. Okay? Mike, you've got to communicate with us before you tell them to go.
We need to get a headset because I can't.
Yeah.
I can't talk through the wall. So we need someone to do that.
All right. So for right now.
But I thought you guys were communicating.
Yeah. So right now, give me a countdown and then we'll say, right? Shady, you're ready? Okay. Go ahead and go.
Yay.
We just finished session 1. This is the beginning of session 2, but a couple quick highlights of session 1. Who did you speak with?
Oh, I spoke with Lieutenant General Anthony Cotton, and he was incredible, had so many wonderful things to say about empathy and compassion in the Air Force.
In the Air Force. And then I spoke to Bill Burnett from Stanford, and he had some great advice about do 100 things with any object to strengthen your sense of curiosity and creativity. I spoke to Sydney Mintz, Rabbi Sydney Mintz, who's hilarious and wise and all that wrapped in one. And for our next session, let's see, I am going to be speaking with someone, I love this man's mind, and I got to meet him in person last year, Sir Ken Robinson, who is going to talk about creativity, which is so wonderful. And then who are you speaking with?
I'm speaking with OLYMPIA LEPOINT. She's amazing.
About math and science. She's a rocket scientist.
A rocket scientist.
It's nice. Just how great is that to just say that you're a rocket scientist? And then lastly, we're going to speak to Angela Duckworth, who coined the term grit. She's a dear friend, and she's been a real leader in the whole Character Day movement. And we're excited for this session, and we're going to be tapping into various events too. So I think I will let you go, and I'm going to go interview Sir Ken Robinson.
Sounds wonderful.
Okay, and just to remind everyone, there are over 200,000 events happening all over the world today, in all 50 states and in countries around the world, all talking about living a life of meaning and purpose and strengthening things like creativity and empathy and gratitude and social intelligence and all the things that matter to have a meaningful, exciting, and good life that matters. So I'm so excited to speak to Sir Ken Robinson. Okay, so let's see. A couple ways I could introduce you. Hi. Can you see me okay? Hello. Nice. One of them is I could say you have the most watched TED Talk ever. The other one I'd like to say is you brought to the forefront the idea of making sure that creativity is not killed in the school system and how to nurture it and make it multiply. And how would you, is there another line that you'd like, oh, I'd also introduce myself as this? Anything you would add to that?
I suppose I'm a father, a husband, and all those things, you know, and I have 5 brothers and a sister. So for me, this isn't theoretical. You know, all of these things arise out of, you know, the life I've had, the people I know, the place I've been. So, yeah, to me, it's not only a kind of matter of principle. It's a matter of, you know, really practical importance.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. It's all interdependent, and we're all living this life, and so many of these things are not just in school or in work, but they're creativity in every way, the way you cook your food, the way you plan your day, the way you plan your life, the way you give back. It's all infused with creativity. I'm a true believer of that too. So tell us, well, I guess just your bigger ideas, because you've thought so much about this subject, written so many books and talks about it. Just why is creativity important? That seems such a silly question to ask, but I would love to just hear you give your like 30,000-foot view of how it fuels everything. That would be my answer, but what is yours?
There are very few things that distinguish human beings from the rest of life on Earth. It's very important. I always think it's very important to remember this. I remember several years ago, I spoke at an event in Vancouver with the Dalai Lama. It was called the Vancouver Peace Summit. It was a fantastic event. And he said lots of wonderful things. But one of the things he said was that to be born at all is a miracle. So what are you going to do with your life? And it's really important to hang on to this idea, I think. It's a very simple one, but you know, as far as we know, the planet has been around for nearly, well, over 4.5 billion years, which is an immense and unimaginable amount of time. Most of us, with popping winds, we get to spend about 8 years on the planet, maybe a few more. And in very many respects, we're just like every other life form on Earth. Our lives are short, although they can seem long at times. We're you know, we depend on the earth for all it provides. We live, we breathe, we eat. We can't survive outside the planet or in certain conditions. All life is like that. But there's a big difference. Obviously, we're different in some key respect. I mean, one of them, for example, is illustrated by the fact that we're sitting on a Skype connection here. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. This is being watched all around the world. There are 200,000 events going on for Cow Today around the world. We're connected in ways that other creatures can't literally conceive of. And what drives all of these extraordinary achievements in the arts, the sciences, in all the multifarious ways that human culture gets manifested, is this deep power we have of imagination and all the associated practical powers of creativity. Creativity is not some exotic power that just a few people have. It comes with the kit if you're a human being. It's at the very center of what it is to be human, to be a person. And it's manifested in the languages we speak, the theories we hold, the values we have, the relationships we have, the buildings we occupy, the clothes we wear. And it's rather extraordinary to me that we've reached a point where we think it just a few people have, when it's clear that it's what unites the human race, and one of the things anyway. So to me, it really strikes the very heart of who we are and what we're trying to do in our lives.
I love that. You know, you mentioned the Dalai Lama, and I always love, it's like, my religion is kindness, I think he once said, and maybe we could add to that, our religion is creativity. Because if you recognize the creativity in everyone, everyone rises. If you create environments for creativity and you fuel your own and support others, we all rise. And you've done so much thinking around that in terms of the school and education system. So can you share some thoughts? I mean, obviously, when you first started talking about it to where you are now, I'd love to know the evolution of, have your thoughts changed about it? Do you think your talks have made an effect? What do we still need to do? I'd love to hear some of those thoughts.
Well, the thing is that although creativity is at the heart of what is we human, it doesn't follow that we all develop these powers. You know, it's a very practical process to be creative. I mean, for example, we've just welcomed our first friend. Kate had a baby, and you know, I know a lot of people think that their grandchildren are exceptional and beautiful and the best baby that's ever been born. I know everybody thinks that, and I feel sorry for these people who think that. Turns out our granddaughter is. So, but like every child, and you know, there are millions of children being born around the earth. You know, all day and every week. New life is brought to them, and every single one of them has immense capacity. Whether they develop them is a different matter, because I always feel that human resources are like the world's natural resources. They're buried beneath the surface. You know, there are lots of them, but you have to discover them, you have to find them, and then when you find them, you have to work on them and refine them and develop them into something. So
that's wonderful. I think you know
what. I've got a bit of a crossfire. I was just listening to some other conversation.
I know. I'm so like, did you finish that thought? I'm like, should I? Does that have a quote on the end, or okay? I'm gonna joke.
Yeah, I just kind of lost interest in that.
No. Fair. Oh, that thing.
So I think that was you talking to me or somebody else saying, could we do something else now? No. So the point is that there is, and we've always known it, an intimate relationship between what people often refer to as nature and nurture, between what we bring into the world and what we make of the world when we're in it, and the opportunities that we're given and the ones that we take. Education is a very big part of the opportunities that we're given. It's a very important process of nurturing. And my concern for a long time has been that although we have these latent abilities, our current education systems weren't intended to cultivate very many of them. They've often been focused in a very narrow way. I don't speak in criticism of schools or teachers. It's the system itself that does that. So, yeah, I think that much more has to be done, much more should be done. It should begin with a better understanding, I think, of people in positions of power of what creativity is about. People need to be helped to cultivate the skills of teaching for creativity. But I think there has been a shift, and I think that the work I've done has made some contribution to it. I mean, I wouldn't want to get carried away with it, but I know that the numbers of people who see the talks I've given, who I travel a lot, I speak to a lot of people about these things. There's a lot of wonderful stuff going on in different countries all around the world. Some of which would be happening anyhow and was, and some of which I know has been, at least informed by some things I've done. So I feel optimistic about that. I think there is a shift happening.
Well, I want to thank you. We're not closing. Usually you thank someone when you're closing, but thank you for all the work you've done. And I've noticed a shift. Remember, I mean, obviously there was STEAM, that was the focus, and then people added the A. It was STEM, I'm sorry, STEM at first, where they were leaving out the arts, and then we got the A in, and then it was STEAM. And then my daughter really thought the H for humanities needed to go in, so STEAM, and then you get the C for like a consciousness. So I feel like in the last like 20 years, I feel like there is greater value placed to these things that were kind of, there was so much focus on math and science kind of at the expense of the arts. And I think valuing that, I'm feeling like people are recognizing that they're all important. And you were saying something interesting. A lot of our work with character strengths is, for a long time, you learned about character, empathy, kindness, creativity, courage, all of those things in religious settings. And then at least in America with the public school system, you couldn't talk about them with the separation of church and state. So for a long time in schools, character wasn't taught, and there's been this big revolution in bringing ideas of character and what you're talking about, creativity and all this kind of back into the school system. So I think you're a huge part of it. I want to close, now I really do have to close even though I could talk to you all day, is what is the best piece of advice? We're asking people all around the world and all our speakers the best piece of advice they've received, because we feel like it not only shares wisdom, which you have a lot to share, but it also shares with us what you value, what you're working on, and what you need to keep close to you remembering.
Yeah. And can I just say something before I get to the advice?
Yeah,
this will only take about an hour and a half, Tiffany, so we should be good. No, just a quick thing. One is that putting the H and the C and so on into STEAM is always a good thing. When I talk about creativity, I'm only saying it just now because I know some people see the talks I've given and they can get the wrong end of it. When I talk about creativity, for me, is not a synonym for the arts. I've been a big advocate of the arts my whole life. I think they're vitally important in education. I used to be professor of arts education. But creativity is a different and a bigger idea. You can be creative at anything. You can be creative at maths, at science, technology. Some of the most brilliantly creative people are mathematicians or scientists.
Absolutely.
I published a book a little while ago called Creative Schools, Transforming Education from the Ground Up. And it's making that point, that creativity it's a function of intelligence. It's not a function of a particular sort of activity. And it's rooted in skill and knowledge, and you have to develop those things as well. It's just not. So there's a whole kind of set of implications for the curriculum and for pedagogy. That's true. The other thing, just quickly to say, is that life is not linear. This is, I think, very important to recognize. And one illustration of that is that these debates that we're having have all happened before. John Dewey in the 19th century, I remember, said, I mean, I don't remember. I looked at powers around the 19th century, Tiffany.
You don't, but I've read his work too. Go ahead.
John Dewey said something to the effect that every generation has to rediscover democracy. This is true. We suffer from a tremendous lapse of memory often, a kind of cultural amnesia. It's like every generation thinks they invented sex. I mean, it turns out our generation, the 60s, did that, but my parents were under the impression they did too. And so these issues of character, you'll find these in the ancient writings of the Greeks, and character education was a big part of movements in the 19th century. What happens is there's a cyclical character. It's like in the economy. Things come, they go, new generations come in, they forget. So one piece of advice for me always is, to take a longer view of history and not, we are here for a fleeting amount of time, but none of us exists independently. We are born into complex cultures. We're born into the consciousness of our communities, and we become who we are, not just by realizing what's inside of us, but by getting a deeper understanding of what's around us. And that's the great challenge for education, to knit together these relationships between the inner and outer worlds. And it's the arts and the sciences form the bridges between these two things. And it's why we need balance in the curriculum. It's not about this or that. It's like in medicine, there are some people who specialize in kidneys, and some people who specialize in the pancreas, and some people who specialize in the thyroid gland, or one of the parathyroid glands. But it's one body trying to work together. And we have to see these things whole, and we have to see them steady.
I love that. One of the films that we made that people are showing at these events is called 30,000 Days, and it goes through the 30,000-year history of you know, all the things you're bringing up, from the Greeks, all the different parts of the world, all wrestling with the same thing. What does it mean to live a good life, be a good human, contribute well? And that is what being human ultimately is constantly wrestling and hopefully evolving. But sometimes it's like 2 steps back, 3 steps forward. But I think the bigger thing is, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that's the balance we all have to strike between, and it's a generational challenge for us now. You know, there are some things that are natural and ancient to the human condition. It's about what being a human being has always been about, and challenges we always face. And I remember, you know, there's a wonderful book you made, I'm sure you know, called The Hero's Journey.
Yes.
Which is about
Campbell, yes.
You know, the great cycles in people's cultures and the myths we bring about, and that we see them present now. It's why we can take a Shakespeare play and put it in modern dress and still get it, as long as it's properly kind of nuanced. But you know, there are ancient truths that apply to all of us and always did to every generation of humanity. So we have to understand that, and we have to have our kids that see themselves in the larger sweep of history. But also, every life is unique and every set of circumstances is different. And collectively now, we face challenges as a species that previous generations have not faced.
Right.
There are more of us than ever before. We are putting tremendous strains on the climate. It's what this, you know, the Sustainable Development Goals are about. We're more connected than ever before. We're about to face, if we're to believe, the hyper tsunami of artificial intelligence. What we do know is every technology has entirely unexpected consequences. I mean, look at the iPhone. I mean, who expected when the iPhone came out just over 10 years ago that it would, you know, introduce this entire kind of virtual space of social media, which is having all kinds of kickbacks. So it's a balance between what's novel in our current circumstance and what's fundamentally true of human beings wherever they were and whenever they lived. And getting that balance right is important. It's why I think Character Day matters so much, because it helps to raise these sorts of questions.
Oh, that's a beautiful note to close on. You and I need to have a meal together, because there's lots more to talk about this. We have someone waiting in the wings, but Sir Ken Robinson, thank you so much for the work you do in the world and being such a light about creativity, that it's everything. And I'm really glad you got to be part of the day, and thanks so much.
Well, congratulations to you, Tiffany, for all you do. I think this is a wonderful day.
Thank you. Okay, so he's amazing, and yes, creativity is everything, and I'm glad that he is such a voice in the world, reminding everyone that. I'm going to invite the fabulous Renee Wilson back, because she has the next interview. So Renee, come and join me here. We're going to do a little living room switcherooski. There's Sawyer. You saw his head, because it's my office, and we're doing kind of a living room. You can come in here.
You can just trade off here.
I am going to leave. I'm so wired that I'm connected. I'm unplugging. And Renee, you go in there.
I'm coming in. Thank you. I'm coming in.
Yep. I'm just gonna come help here.
Help me out.
What are we?
Okay, we're on camera 1.
Hello, hello. I'm so excited to welcome our next guest. Her name is Olympia LEPOINT, and she is a real-life rocket scientist. She's a real-life, like, just crazy, insane, smart woman. Olympia LEPOINT is an award-winning rocket scientist. She's known as the modern-day hidden figure by People magazine. Her fans call her the new Einstein. And she's here to talk with us about how you can leverage the brain and its power to overcome fear and to create the life that you want. And so we're really honored to have her here. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Olympia.
Hi. Actually, I'm testing 1, 2, 3. I can't hear anything.
Can you hear me?
Any sound?
Can you hear me? Yeah. I can hear you. Can you hear me, Olympia? Can you hear me now?
I can't hear anything on this end, but you guys look really great.
So do you.
I cannot hear you right now, but I'm really happy to be a part of the Character Day today.
Thank you so
much.
And
unfortunately, I can't read lips, so hopefully the sound actually works in a couple seconds.
Okay, well, we're working on getting that fixed and get the sound so you can actually hear me.
Okay, and I'm going to walk in while...
Okay.
I feel bad because Renee is getting all the AV problems. Okay.
Hi,
Poor
dude. I can't
Renee,
hear
I am,
anything on this end. I think there may be a little bit
I'm
of
sitting
technical
here with
difficulty.
Renee because I feel so bad that
Hi,
on the
can you hear me?
AV problems, it has been Renee. I'm sorry.
Oh no,
That's
no,
okay.
I
It
can't
happens,
hear you at all.
but we are figuring out the
This is
technical
like
difficulty.
fascinating.
Can
I'm
you guys all hear
seeing,
me? 'Cause
I'm
not even
seeing how
connected
beautiful
here.
you
Let me
guys
just
are,
see.
and I'm
Go ahead,
not
plug in,
hearing
and
any sound at all on
I
this
would love
end.
to hear. I would love to hear a few of the most amazing quotes that Sir Ken Robinson just talked about.
You can't come in. Sorry.
I
That
loved
was
how-
Ermina.
I loved how Sir Ken Robinson was talking about reinventing democracy every generation.
Yes, reinventing democracy. It gave me hope for the time we're in right now, where Sir Ken was talking about that. We keep thinking that we're reinventing things like creativity, but every generation we need to reinvent democracy. That's what we think. But really, it's us kind of wrestling with all these new issues. So are we able to hear her now? I heard something. We are.
All right.
Can you hear her? Can she hear you? Let's make sure before
We're
I
going
leave.
to find out.
We're going to hear. Let's go over to Olympia and make sure with AV is good.
This is wonderful. I'm so excited to be part of the show.
Okay.
All
You're
right.
good. You're good. You're good.
All right. So happy you can hear me and so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
Well, let's just jump right in. You've been so successful and you're like a rocket scientist, which is like so amazing. Can you tell us just what role have character strengths played in helping you achieve all of the success that you've achieved?
Oh my gosh, the cornerstone to all science, all technology, all inspiration is integrity. It is the ability to know who you are and walk in your own path, no matter what type of challenges you face. And in understanding how important your character is, meaning what it is that you can do to fulfill the purpose that you are here on this planet. Whatever it is that you do, or steps to fulfill your mission, fulfill your passion, that is a part of character. And I'm so excited to be a part of Character Day because when I personally learned that I was a person who had to overcome fear. I overcame fear in all areas of my life. And I translated the ultimate overcoming that fear into launching rockets. When people think about science and they think about space, they think about, oh my gosh, it's so difficult to do.
Yeah.
And it is difficult. I failed algebra, calculus, chemistry, geometry, and I learned through a process starting at 16 years old. I write about this in my first book, Mathophobia, and in my second book, Answers Unleashed. I talk about how we have to reprogram our thoughts so we can overcome fear. And in my life, and what I have to do inside of me, is I had to take those thoughts that wasn't aligned with my character. Take those thoughts that had difficulty in translating itself into moving in my purpose, and remove those and replace it with thoughts that were better. Like, for example, if I failed mathematics, I had to think, okay, what could I do instead? How can I think differently about myself? And the truth is, I had the ability to see, oh, wow, I could understand how I was thinking and realize that just because I failed before doesn't mean I'm going to fail again, because I'm going to learn the lesson and take that and apply it and move forward. And that same process of taking a lesson, shifting your thought about it, and then applying it in a different way allows not only to move forward in your plan, but it allows you to launch rockets as well.
Yes, I love that. Overcoming fear and changing your thoughts to like actually be able to do the things that you want to do in life. So with that said, like, what do you think are some of the strongest character traits like someone would need to go into the STEM fields?
Wow, that is such a great question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, mathematics, it's the basis of all technology, not only in the United States, but across the entire world. And literacy is built on understanding how to use the mathematics, the science, and the technology in order to create global solutions for everyone. So what does that look like in the science field? It is understanding character in building in a science field is one, understanding how to really investigate and appreciate how math and science is real, meaning how it actually applies to your real life and how you can make improvements based on using it. A lot of people don't necessarily understand that there's 4 types of fears that are into being scared of how you're going to use the technology or the science. And the first fear is Quincy the quitter. The second, the person is Donna the overdoer. The third person is Samuel the struggler. And the fourth person is Crystal the criticizer. And so when we learn to remove those fears about how to actually study mathematics, how to actually look at our own abilities and our thoughts, we actually become different people. David the Determined is now the next person that it now overcomes quitting. Sarah the Strategist is the person that doesn't overdo but realizes the strategy. Ivan the Innovator is a person that doesn't struggle but realizes he brings a gift to the world through his thinking. And then Crystal the Criticizer turns into Ellen the Explorer, able to find out all these great things about how to look at the world differently. And that's the way that we problem solve in STEM. We have to be inventors, we have to be explorers, we have to be determined, and we have to be strategists.
I love that. Inventors, explorers, and get that critical, all those different fears that just kind of keep you from going after what do you want. So how do you like instill a love of learning in your students, and like what advice would you have for students who aren't quite feeling that love of learning?
That's an excellent question. There's a lot of teachers that are out there thinking, what can we do? And I understand that feeling because I teach part-time. When I'm not touring, speaking about my books and my lectures and my true brain theory of relativity on how the brain actually rewires itself, I teach part-time as a mathematics professor. And I see this all the time, and I know what the teachers go through. There's so many students that have that fear of mathematics, and they're thinking, how do I even handle this? How do I even address that type of situation and move students into STEM? And there's a 2-part process. The students have to be aware that they are experiencing fear. So someone has to educate them and letting them know that they are experiencing one of these types of fears. And someone can actually find out their type of fear by easily going to mathophobia.com, where you can take like a free online assessment of what type of fear you have. And then the other way is that the teachers have to be informed on how each brain works. Now, there's different ways to teach mathematics based on how someone's Myers-Briggs personality is. Now, each one of us has a certain way that we look at situations. And so how we look at situations is how we're actually going to learn mathematics and science. So when we look at it in such a way where we're able to address the fear and then change the concept of fear into an exciting part, make it exciting, make a game out of it. When you make the science and mathematics fun, you actually turn off the reptilian part of the brain that fires during fear, and you turn on the frontal brain lobes. And when there's fun, that pleasurable endorphin feeling of fun with science then gets burnt, if you will, into their mind, so they equate science with fun.
Yeah.
Now, one simple thing that I do is I have a game. It's a math game, and it's a really simple game. It's like yes or no questions in math. It's like yes, if the answer is yes, you remain standing. If the answer is no, you sit down. It's almost like Simon Says, but but you ask people questions about math, and they could either write down the problem or whatever it is they need to do. And if the answer is true, like for example, 4 + 4 is 5. Now that answer is false if we are looking at the Euclidean system. So if that answer is false, a student would sit down and say that's not true, and that would give them the decision-making capability in their brain to be able to rewire the brain itself during mathematics, so it becomes easier and easier and easier for someone to solve problems. And if 2 + 2 = 4, and that's true, then the students will remain standing up, and they are automatically rewiring the brain from that movement.
Love it, love it. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for being with us today, Olympia. It's really an honor to have you here and just to learn from the wisdom that you have to share about character. I hope you have a really beautiful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. And now I just want to welcome Tiffany back in. She's going to interview Angela Duckworth.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
All right. Switching seats. That was great. She's
Yeah,
terrific.
she's awesome.
Rocket scientist. Okay, I'm getting plugged back in here. We're gonna move this out.
Behind you for volume.
Okay, behind me for volume.
Who are you interviewing?
I'm interviewing Angela Duckworth, a friend and a rocket scientist in grit, basically. We went from a rocket scientist in aerospace to now the intellectual rocket scientist of social and emotional learning and character. So, let's see, do we have Angela on, or is she online ready for me?
How long have you known Angela?
Angela, hi.
Hi.
Woohoo! Angela's in the house. Huggies.
Also, we totally matched. I guess that was planned, right?
Yeah, you look great. So I wish you were here in person, though. That'd be way more fun.
Next time.
Next time. So I'm so happy to have you because I feel like this is ground zero since we're using all these like aerospace terms, but you're like ground zero. And I feel like there's a cabal of us that have been really working to bring the consciousness up, and you're one of the first and leaders in the space. So your official title is CEO of Character Lab, and you're a professor at UPenn, where my husband went to school, and the acclaimed best-selling book, Grit, which really taught people a language, and you really brought to the forefront an idea that a lot of people, I think, got really excited with giving it a name and figuring out how to strengthen it and what it means. So I'm so happy to have you here. There's over 200,000 events. Is that crazy? Sorry.
Oh my gosh, you are very gritty, by the way, which you already knew, and I'm so impressed with Character Day, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Oh, well, it is nice, just because we have developed a friendship, so I feel like from our first conversation, I think year one you were on, and just to see how it's all grown, and the conversation has really evolved, and that's what I'm most interested in talking to you about. I got to hear you speak at the UPenn in Texas this summer, and you really talked about your thoughts since the whole grit, movement started. So I would love for you to share, first maybe define grit for the 1% of the people in the world that don't know, and then what you've learned since coming out with the book and studying it so much and talking with so many people about it.
Grit, as I define it, is the combination of being passionate about something over a really long time, and then also perseverance, working incredibly hard toward that goal, despite setbacks and even, plateaus in progress where nothing tragically bad is happening, but you don't see obvious progress day to day. And I do think that it is a quality that defines high achievers across art, science, rocket science included, entertainment, entrepreneurship. Why? I think it's because accomplishing things in the world, it's hard and it doesn't happen overnight. I think that's why this quality of stamina, both in what you're committed to and how hard you're willing to work toward it, matters so much. And Tiffany, you asked me, what have I learned since writing the book? Well, one thing I learned is that people can confuse, especially if they like the idea of grit, they confuse the idea of grit with just character broadly. And as your film and your work and also lots of science shows, character is plural. I'm a mom of 2 girls. They're 15 and 16. And if you asked me, what do you want Lucy and Amanda to be? Do you want them to be gritty? I would say, of course I want them to be gritty, but I also want them to be kind. I want them to be generous, grateful, curious, open-minded. There is actually potentially an infinite list of character strengths, admirable qualities that make your life better and make other people's lives better.
I'm so glad you said that, because I do feel like there are these certain words that become these buzzwords, and at the detriment of looking at the full spectrum, that there's so many different parts that we can develop and value at the same time, and that's great. But I do love that my father, I'm just thinking about this for the first time. He would say relentless. Like if I wanted to do something, he'd be like, Tiffany, you're relentless. Now, I would like to rename that, perseverance or grit, because when I want to do something, I'm just like, I'm not letting go of that. But, one thing that in your talk, you have these great playbooks, which all educators can use. You showed one on practice, and I'm I'm the mother of a 15-year-old and a 9-year-old. And always the question of how much should you push practice and the 10,000 hours, and what's the science of practice? And you had some really elegant ideas in this short film that you showed. So I first tell us about the playbooks for Character Lab, and then what you've learned about just people who practice things and really focus on something every day.
We're trying to, and I say we as Character Lab, we're trying to take scientific discoveries about how character develops and turn that into actionable advice for parents like you, Tiffany, and me, and also teachers. So playbooks are one way that we do that. If you go to characterlab.org, you can find these free downloadable playbooks and videos. They're not only based on science, they are co-written with scientists. So unlike, sometimes you go to a website and you're like, I wonder if this is actually right. This science is right. Next week, by the way, and this is the first time I'm announcing it, so right here on Character Day, next week we will have a whole new set of playbooks. We're going to have a grit playbook debut for the very first time. But also, as I mentioned, grit's not the only thing about character, so we have 3 others, and there will be many more. So we're going to have self-control, and then curiosity and gratitude. But then if you keep coming back to the website, there'll be more and more. You asked about practice, and a lot of parents ask the question, how much should my kids practice? Say they're practicing piano or, something else that they're trying to get better at. Am I supposed to have them practice like 4 hours a day, 8 hours a day? And I think the most important insight from the science of practice is that it's quality that matters so much more than quantity. I mean, of course, there are no shortcuts, and you have to put in thousands of hours over maybe a lifetime if you're going to try to become world class. But the most common mistake that parents make is that they say, okay, go practice your piano for 30 minutes. If those are 30 mindless minutes, if those are 30 low quality, going through the motions, kind of thinking about your Snapchat account at the same time, then you may as well not have practiced at all. It may have been actually better to practice 0 minutes of low quality versus even 5 minutes of concentrated practice. You know what you're practicing, you know why you're practicing, and then with feedback. So somebody has to give you some feedback, especially if you're an early player, early performer, a young kid. Somebody has to be helpful to you and say, you know what, just play that again and try to do it a little slower. So my message to parents is quality, quality, quality. If you want to practice like an Olympic athlete or a Nobel Prize winner in science, then take a lesson from them and emphasize quality over quantity.
I love that. And when my husband and I were taking music lessons when we were younger, they would give us what to play. And for our daughters, what's been such a revelation for me to watch our awesome guitar teacher and now violin is let them choose the song. What do you want to play? And they're so into it. They're playing their favorite songs. And that was such a mindset switch into just teaching music. I don't know if that's a new thing or if if that's a new way to teach, but I'm like, well, that makes so much sense. They're going to be passionate about it. They know the words.
Lay it down, right?
Right. I mean, they're gonna be into it. And so that's been
right, yeah.
And as you're talking, I mean, it's great. First of all, educators, check out her playbooks. They're amazing. And there's so many educators using the playbooks, but also for adults. All of us are trying to practice I hope we're all lifelong learners. I just took up the ukulele. I'm not very good, but I'm trying to get better. But I feel like anything, if you're always trying to challenge yourself, that always involves kind of practice and mastering things. So I don't think your playbooks are just for educators. I think they're for anyone that's watching right now or watches later that's interested in just developing who they are. Our tagline this year is we're all works in progress, which I really like. We're all works in progress all the time. And one of the things that we're asking all of our speakers, and I loved, you sent it in already, but I'm asking you again because it felt like such a beautiful backstory, but we're asking everyone the best piece of advice. And of course, people have more than one. Different points in their life, they think of different pieces of advice. But I'm loving this because you have to see, Angela, people are sending such interesting advice. I mean, some you knew, but all these kind of interesting takes. But it's so illuminating on first of all, what character strengths they value or they're working on, right? That it tells you so much about somebody. This is my favorite bit of advice. It's something they need to remind themselves, which is almost like practicing your character development, right? A piece of advice you keep thinking about or you tack up above your desk is to practice that idea. So what is your best piece of advice that you received? And if you could tell a little bit of the backstory too.
So I love that you are doing this because I just published a scientific paper on advice giving.
Really?
And it was led by here's the thing that maybe you didn't know, but it's mind-blowing. and it was led by my student Lauren Eskris-Winkler. So her credit is she's the one behind it. So the question is, when you want to get better at something, usually people give you advice like, oh, you should do this and you should do that. But in this study, we said, what is the benefit to the advice giver? So for example, all those people that you're asking, what's the best advice that you got? They're benefiting by articulating, by remembering, by reflecting. So our research says that, Tiffany, you're motivating the advice givers at least as much as you might be motivating the people who hear the advice. So my advice, by the way, is advice.
I love that. Maybe when we release, at some point we're going to do a best of because the advice is just too good to not share. Maybe we can release the report along with it, because I love that. It is so interrelational. I mean, when someone gives you a good piece of advice, you're like, ooh, yeah, and then you pass it around, and that's what humans do, is pass around knowledge, so it's very primal. But please send me that advice.
I will send you that. I'll send you the article, and I will also give you some advice. So beyond the fact that I do think giving advice is good, and it's very related. When I was a little girl, I think I may have been in 4th grade, I kept a diary, and I wrote in my diary, if I could just remember everything that I learned, I would be so smart. And I think it's very related to this advice giving thing, because, sometimes we learn things about our character, and, we learn, oh, we should do the 3 blessings exercise and, be grateful and take a moment to think about what's good in our life. And then we forget, just like life gets busy. And so one of my pieces of advice is that, reflecting on the things that you already learned and that are in you, them, and that they make you feel good and they make other people feel good. But to, I guess, periodically remind, reflect. I think that's why this advice giving thing is wonderful. I'm sure a lot of people who are giving you the advice that they, maybe the best advice they got from their mother or their grandfather, maybe they hadn't actually thought of it recently until you asked them. And so my advice is to, keep a journal, remind yourself. Sometimes people put like signs up in their office. Back there I have a gratitude board. I take all the thank you notes that people have shared with me, to me, and I put them up there. And it's just to remind me to write my thank you notes, right?
Because I love that.
But I forget.
No, we're only human. We're fallible creatures, and we need constant reminders. And I'm just remembering how grateful I am to you, because so much of your work is like giving advice to everyone, right? So you're giving advice through your work with Grit, with your students, all these research papers, the playbook. So thank you, Angela Duckworth. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And have a great day, and thank you for all the work you do in this space.
Thank you, Tiffany. Much love.
Bye-bye. Okay, now we're going to invite Sawyer Steele, my partner in this film studio in many films. We call each other co-brains.
Hello.
Hello, and are you all plugged in?
I am. I have a microphone. I don't need to be plugged in.
Angela was so great.
That was so amazing, and I love that actually everything I was thinking about. So I get to be in the other room listening to these fantastic interviews while also doing a million.
Do you want to jump in a million times?
I want to jump in so many times, and what I'm thinking, we only have about 1 minute. So
okay,
so
quick.
But I love that she just landed so highly on the best piece of advice, because I think that's been such a beautiful through line of the whole day.
Yeah.
And in these last few speakers, the things that I was really thinking about a lot were balance. So we had this amazing person talking about creativity, and then we had this amazing person talking about math. And there's no one answer to any of this character stuff. And then Angela landed it on, it's plural.
It's plural.
And it's so many different things. And
it's yes and both. And I think in society, we're understanding that the plurality of everything, gender, ideas.
Totally.
You can change your mind. Hopefully you do change your mind a lot in your life, and you're a work in progress.
Exactly. It brought me back to the best piece of advice that I said this morning was work hard, play hard. And that's about balance too. And I think so many of these pieces of advice that people are bringing out are, it's not just one thing. Yes, go do good or work, but
right. And if you can, like, from today, I'm like writing all these little gems, but just, write them down. I'm a journal writer. I know you're not, but I'm trying to get you to be.
Angela was just talking about it. I think it's super
Any
important.
way you do journal, like you stick a note on the wall, but any way you can kind of experience the idea twice or is so wonderful. And
that act of recalling it and sharing it then
or asking
is just,
someone.
there's
and
research showing that makes.
I can't wait to see your research on that. And also, like, even asking your parents. Oh, we have to wrap. But I was just thinking, asking your parents for advice and your grandparents, it's one of the most beautiful conversations you can have is ask them their best piece of advice they got, which I'm sure they've shared with you. But all of that is like building these stories of wisdom. And we have to wrap up. I'm getting the woo, wrap it up.
Shared this morning. I was thinking about it. I was like, God, it took me a minute to think about it. So ask.
Ask your parents. Ask your best friends. Okay. So next up, we are going to have Mackenzie Darling talk with Sonia Brown. We are also going to talk about how to create a bully-free environment in your schools. And we're going to talk about unlocking purpose. So we're
going to a few more really exciting events.
Yeah, so this video is going to end, and then click on the next one, and we got a lot more stuff for you. So thank you so much.